Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. Welcome to the Paranormal Experienced Radio Show with your host, Kat Hobson. We're here to learn all we can about every type of experience within the paranormal. There will be interviews with seasoned investigators of the spiritual realm, including ufologists, cryptozoologists, psychics, mediums, authors, and creators of technology, and others with credible knowledge to share. Together, we will find out what brought these investigators of the unknown into the field and learn what keeps them working so hard in it. I'm interested in learning how these individuals go about their work, and I believe you are too. This program is all about bringing those who are in the field together with our listeners who are interested in what they find. For us, the paranormal is all about working with and supporting each other. We're all here seeking answers to the questions that bother us so. Now, let's get those answers. And enjoy the show.
Good evening. Welcome to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host for the evening on Paranormal Experienced Radio. We have got such a great show lined up, and I'm so excited that we're going to be able to get it off. I was worried for good reason, and everything has worked out, and we're just keeping prayers over our guests. So you'll know in a minute. But I also want to comment on the ongoing situation in Philadelphia. In case you have missed it, there is a drug bust gone bad, apparently. And at the time that we started this, 6 police officers had been shot. There was still one who was trapped. There is a police officer who was injured on his way to the scene. And all those poor people that live around where this is happening are trapped in their homes. The police were trying to get them out, but it's not safe to, because there's one person that they know of that's still in the house that is armed, and he's just shooting everywhere. So if you are so inclined, whatever you practice, if you could cover that situation with positivity and love and protection for everyone there, and prayer, because that's a really tough scene. So, and I know that's not the way any of those people imagine their day going. So just put it out there. Let's manifest a little ease on that situation. And, I am really pleased to be here tonight, obviously. I have got a fantastic guest for you, and this is somebody who does something that is not necessarily my strong suit. I get responses. I am not great at picking them up as they're happening. I've just bought a new tool from Bob Christopher to try to aid me with that, and it is so cute. So, it has beach stuff on it, and I am that girl. So, we are going to welcome Tim Woolworth. He is a paranormal researcher, a writer, a public speaker. He is the guy when it comes to voice boxes and ITC. He has also launched an educational site, paranormalstudy.com, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, to educate I mean, who doesn't need to learn more, right? I have been all over this page. The other website is itcvoices.org. .org. And you can find more information on him at timwoolworth.com. And Tim, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you were able to be here tonight.
Oh, me too. It was a game time decision, I gotta say.
Well, sure. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I was actually prepared if something changed and you felt like you weren't able to, or just had enough and didn't want to come on tonight. But I'm so glad that you felt like it.
Yeah, I just had a full day of rest after the last nightmare of, 4 days or so. And, things still aren't better, but at least I'm at home, I'm relaxed, and I'm doing what I love right now. I'm talking about the paranormal.
I love that too. So it's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I know that people are probably hitting your web pages right now, but for those who can't, can you describe what actually brought you into your interest in ITC and the paranormal in general?
Oh, absolutely. Like most people who are in this field, my interest with the paranormal goes back to childhood. I grew up in a house that was very early 19th century in a little city on the shore of Lake Ontario. In my backyard is where the War of 1812 was fought. It's where the French and Indian War was fought. It's where the Revolutionary War was fought, because about 300 feet from my front door is Fort Ontario. So when I was a kid, my dog was out at the tree, and she just was going around in a circle and dug up this little piece of metal. And I took it to the fort and found out it was the piece of metal that went on the top of a Revolutionary War flagpole. So I grew up in a very historic area. And
that is way cool.
My house was no different. I don't know when it came into family possession. The records are a little murky, but I do know 3 generations of my stepfather's family had lived and died in that particular house. And growing up, I saw cool things like object translocation, the typical knocks and shadow people, fun stuff like that. More importantly, my mother constantly researched the paranormal, not because she had an interest in it. Rather, she wanted to become the best Christian she could and brace herself against all forms of the dark arts. So I grew up with books on demonology and witchcraft and scrying and all these fun things in the house. My mother had them there for educational Christian purposes. Me, I was just pouring through them starting at about 8 years old. And one of the cool things was my family actually had a subscription to Fate magazine. So I started reading that back in like 1987. And that
Good
was...
figure, right?
Here's the funny part. That was the bathroom reading material.
That was ours also, part of it. And Golf Digest.
So after
bunch of golfers.
So once I moved out of the house, I moved out west for a while, and the paranormal always seemed to find me. There was one house I was living in where, without fail, every morning between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, we kept the bedroom door closed, and something would just slam against the door as hard as possible. Actually gave that ghost a name because he was so predictable. But I didn't know anything about ghost hunting back then at all. And that changed in late 2007, 2008. I was living back east in Syracuse, New York. And I write, and I have a ton of books like most people do.
Right.
And my sunroom had several bookshelves full of books. And the top shelf on one of them was full of books on writing. I was out in the kitchen cooking one day, and I hear this thump that came from that room. I go out to the room, and it was a book by Dorothea Brand on the process of writing. It's a very famous book from the
Yes.
Depression era. And I didn't think much of it. I knew the cats couldn't get up to that top shelf, let alone pull out a tightly packed book. So I put it back on the shelf. And I wasn't really writing a lot at this point in my life. And it was a few weeks, maybe a couple months later, and the same thing happened. I'm cooking, and then thump, I go out there. It's the exact same book. And then I said, you know something? I've got this lifetime of education behind me, but I have no idea what to do with it whatsoever. I need to find someone who can teach me. So I did what every aspiring ghost hunter would do in 2007. Go to Craigslist. So I
That's a great place to start. Been there, done that, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, ghost hunting sites weren't really a huge thing back then. So neither was ghost hunting for team-wise. So when I see a guy on Craigslist, I'm like, oh, well, this guy obviously knows what he's doing. So I meet up with him, and I used to be an audio engineer, and I say, well, what kind of gear do you have? What are we going to be doing today? He's like, oh, we're going to go do some EVP sessions. And he showed me his recorder. It was a 4-bit recorder. And I was just blown away. I'm like, I can't believe anyone would ever hunt with something like that. It's all artifact noise. And then I found out that this guy was so entranced in the paranormal that he would think that, if a leaf blew across your path, the ghost must be carrying it. He was that type of person. So it didn't last very long. So I did a little more deep Googling, and I found this group called Central New York Ghost Hunters. Mm-hmm. And it was led by this lady named Stacy Jones, who she'd been in the paranormal forever, and she took me under her wing and kind of taught me the ropes. And then in 2008, we were at Rolling Hills Asylum. I'd only been with the group a couple of months at this point, and we're in Rolling Hills in the old Christmas room, which sadly is no longer accessible. But one of the group members breaks out this little Radio Shack radio, and I'm listening to it, just hearing all this static, and I'm just sitting in the back like, I don't know what the hell this group is doing. And then there was a pause in the static and the words Tim Woolworth. It blew my mind. And I went back, I listened to it, and I went out, found the same type of radio, found instructions online on how to hack it. And this particular radio, actually, Shack Hacks, we'll get into that, had just been discovered like 6 months earlier. So it was like the cutting edge equipment back then that very few people knew about. And that formed my love with ITC, hearing my name coming across clearly. And I just kind of dove headfirst into it, and things started to change once I started to record and analyze and go to different locations, because I picked up different pieces of information that altered the course of my life.
That's pretty fascinating. Like what?
Oh, well, you mentioned my site earlier, ITC Voices. Mm-hmm. ITC Voices is the premier site for ghost boxes. I've written more theory than anyone alive on ghost boxes. I've done everything from unique postulations on how ghost box communication works, to classifying it, and starting to incorporate consciousness studies on it. I did the first worldwide experiment, all kinds of fun stuff. But the thing that made me launch ITC Voices, I was in Gettysburg, and it was March of 2010. It was the old Phenomenology Con, Phenomenology, whatever it was.
Phenomenology. I never got to go to that.
Well, she changed the name a couple times. It went from Phenomenology to Phenomenomicon. So I'm not sure what it was named at that point, but it's coming back next year, I think, just like a get together again. Yeah, I saw Dana post about it. Well, regardless, for those who've been in Gettysburg, and if you haven't, you need to go just for American history. And if you're a fan of the paranormal, there's fewer places in the country that provide you more opportunity to research the paranormal than Gettysburg. So in Gettysburg, there's this section called Little Round Top. It's across from Devil's Den, and basically the North and the South, they set up on either side, and they just volleyed shots at each other, and where the two hills met in the valley was just nasty, nasty, nasty. Yeah. But on Little Round Top, there's a marble castle. and it's for New York Brigade. And if you've ever been there, you know that there are always busloads of people coming up the hill, and they go through the castle and walk around, take their photos of the entire battlefields from up there. But for some reason, when I was there, that it was either a Friday or Saturday morning, no bus. It was
wow.
me and one of my friends who was ghost hunting at the time. And I sat down in the castle. I'm like, hey, let's do a session real quick. So I turned on the box, and I got in about 5 minutes, and that was all I ever needed to change my view, my life, everything. So about 3 minutes into the session, all the static dropped out entirely. It was just me and two spirits on the other side and a tech speaking. And you can hear, I've got it on my site, you can hear it. I mean, it is crystal clear communication.
Yeah.
And what wound up happening is they told me that they were stuck. They'd been there far too long. The lights were everywhere, all this crazy stuff about the other side. And then something came to me after I asked, have you been here? And the response came, far too long. The words just came out of my mouth that said, well, can you see the ones who surround me, my spirit guides? They can help you. And then all of a sudden through the box, they left. And then they started coming through, and it says, thank you. They're through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then one came through, it's like, and they said they were saved, which just blew my mind, because it was the first time with clarity that I know of in the world that a crossing over session had happened in real time. So what I did is I packed up all of my equipment. I took my little Sony recorder back to the hotel where everyone was, and I started just playing it for all of my friends. Like, you got to listen to this, got to listen to this, got to listen to this. And then when I took it home and I started to tear it apart, and I sent it to different friends who were in ITC at that point, like Frank Sumption and Bruce Holliday and a few others, and they were all just blown away. So I said, you know something? There's something happening with these boxes. Not only can we get clear one-on-one communication with the other side in real time with real-time responses, but two, we can actually help them when they need to be helped. And not to say that, I can walk in and I can cross anyone over. No, the process is actually working with a tech, working with a spirit guide, working with whatever you call them, your guardian angel. The word tech has been used by the other side. That's why we describe them as this. But if you ask them, you line up and say, who needs help? Is there anyone here who needs help? Because when you turn on a box, typically you're going to get the word help, help, help over and over. So,
yes.
and when that happens, I ask them all to line up, get together. And then I ask for one of my techs by name, and next thing you know, you'll record things like, oh, we've got his hand, we're going through, thank you. It's that simple, and I've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times at this point, and it's just absolutely stunning to know that you can help people who are in the near Earth realm, those who are stuck, those who did not go through the light, and you can work with the other side to help them achieve the next step of their journey.
What do you think causes them to be stuck, to need assistance with that?
No problem. Let me just, I forgot to dovetail that. That session, a month afterwards, I launched ITC Voices to make sure everybody could learn about ghost boxes and what they could do. So that's what caused me to launch ITC Voices, was that session. But those who are stuck and can't move over, there's a lot of reasons. One, the confusion of death. You're here and then you're not. You can see a world, but you can't interact with it. Two, you could be waiting for somebody, and that opportunity passes, they pass on, and you're stuck waiting for them. Number three, there's certain business you've got to take care of. You want to make sure that your kids go through college, whatever. Four, you could fear eternal judgment. There's a lot of Christians out there, and when they die, everyone's a sinner. We know that. And you see the light, and you're like, I don't want to get judged by this God guy right now. Maybe I can fix things. So you avoid the light. And the light never leads. It just gets a little dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and harder to find, but it's always there. And if you don't go into the light, you're basically stuck for a little while until you can find your way. And that's the near Earth realm, and that's where a lot of our hauntings come from.
That is fascinating, but we're up on our first break. I can't believe this is going so quickly. Y'all, we will be right back. If you have any questions, just go ahead and get in chat. We've got a chat room at WBHM-DB.com. And if you're listening on Spreaker, you see that chat. So y'all just come back. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this network.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I have been having the best time already, and we're just getting started. So, thank you for being here. And, you know, I am with Tim Woolworth, and we are discussing ITC Voices and his experiences with his craft, learning the voice boxes, learning how to recognize situations. So, Tim, I'm sorry I had to stop you.
No problem at all.
We were talking about crossing people, and during the break, you know, one day somebody is going to start recording the breaks, but it's not going to be me because there's so much information that gets shared there. So, and we were discussing things such as, you know, when you're using a box that has so much white noise that you cannot hear the voices coming through. And that's very frustrating.
It can be. And the box, before I get into this, let me just state outright, Everything that I say here is based on my experience. I am not saying it is fact. Your experience may be different than mine. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, solidly. So with ghost boxes. So what I say is based upon my particular experience. I'm not saying it's the same experience or universal fact. Let's just get that out of the way.
Taken care of.
The SB7 is what you were talking about, which is it's kind of a consumer grade ghost box. Mm-hmm. And for those who aren't aware, the SB7 was released, I think it was Halloween of 2010 or maybe 2011. I can't remember. But basically it's a little box, and the design was basically it was trying to emulate what a shack hack can do. Mm-hmm. And to make a shack hack cheaper, what happened in the design is it used a digital tuner. And basically, when you're using digital tuners, you have nothing. It's silent on the dead frequencies. And what a regular shack hack will do, it's kind of a pocket ghost box. It was discovered in 2007 in November, and the instructions were posted by a guy under the pseudonym of Some Duck, and that particular pseudonym was actually Bill Chappell, who many people may know here. Mm-hmm. What he wanted to do was basically take a Frank's box, which we'll probably talk about later, and make a consumer version that everybody could access. So what he did was he took an off-the-shelf radio from Radio Shack, opened it up, and there was a little mute wire in there, and he cut the mute wire. What that allowed to happen was when you put that particular radio on scan, what it would do is it would scan to each subsequent frequency without muting stations where there was nothing. So think of it in an old car, you're driving in the 90s, 80s, even early 2000s, and you're driving to a place that's outside of your home range. You're listening to a radio. You go to once the radio starts to drop out, the thing that everybody used to do if they weren't listening to something on aux was hit the scan button. And what the scan button would do is jump to the next loudest radio frequency, and it would cut out everything underneath. So you'd be able to jump from 97.3, and it would mute itself all the way to 98.5 if there were no good frequencies in between, and turn 98.5 on. So what happens when you cut this mute wire is it does not mute any of those frequencies, and it brings up all of the white noise and the garble from all of these frequencies and plays them. But with a shack hack, what it does is it goes in a linear fashion. So it goes up the band and back around, up the band and back around, or you could reverse it. It goes backwards and around, and at a different rate. Each particular radio had their own select rate. Some were as fast as 0.07 of a second. Some of them were slower, like 0.15 of a second. And they were the go-to for the people who were into ITC early on. And what happened with the SB7 is the designer said, hey, let's make something like a shack hack, only like I said, he used the digital tuner. So when he scanned through, there's nothing in between all the frequencies, no static. So what he did is he integrated artificial white noise. So when you turn on this particular radio, all you hear is and it's really hard on the ears. And as you were saying, there's a lot of noise in there. And when you have that particular noise, you can lose some of the communication. And that's problematic with all ghost boxes, whether it's an SB7, a shack hack, or a boutique box. There's always going to be a little bit of noise. And you're never, ever going to be able to pick up all the conversation in one fell swoop. You're going to miss a lot of it. even after practicing for years, I'm lucky if I can pick up 30% in real time. And when I go out to an event, I bring giant PA speakers with me so the entire room can hear. I can fill the entire room. And you're able to pick up a little bit more at that point, but still you're going to miss a lot, and most of it comes on review. So if you're out there using a shack hack or any other ghost box in the field and you're not recording it, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Yes. Because if I had not had my recorders going, and I caught it on my video recorders as well, then I would never have known that this man was in such pain, such anguish.
And you were talking about him, and you said that you weren't able to hear it in real time, and you were a little morose over that particular fact.
Well, I was, because I was in an it pretty much was an abandoned hospital, and we were just fortunate enough to be allowed to go in by the ownership and investigate it. So we were in the triage area, and I just, trying to think of questions, and I said, did most of the people who were here die from a heart attack? And when I got home and was reviewing, a man said, no, they shot me. Yeah. And his voice was just like, talk to me, And I was upset because it was such a rarity to be allowed to go in there, and now you can't because it's so derelict. But after that they wouldn't let people come in for just everyday investigations anymore.
And that's before ghost boxes were a thing. It was the same thing with EVP. Mm-hmm. You'd get messages on EVP, and it'd wrench your heart apart. I remember one EVP I got. It was crystal clear, Class A, a woman's voice, complete warble. I mean, it was conversation level, and it just said, I'm here, like she really wanted to reach out to me, but I wasn't able to hear her in real time. And that's the one clip that still just resonates with me. And hopefully, that particular woman was able to find her solace with all the other people who came into that particular location, because it was one of those haunted attraction places. But we mentioned during the break how you said that you really wanted to make contact with that person again. I intimated that it's quite possible that you might be able to, because paranormal investigators, what they don't realize is there's something called a contact field. The contact field is a term that was coined by Ernst Senkowski. Ernst Senkowski was the man who actually named the field of ITC. He was a physicist by trade, absolutely brilliant, and he worked with so many people in the dawn of ITC. And he died a couple years ago. His book, Instrumental Transcommunication, is a classic. I've got a PDF copy, both on ITC Voices and Paranormal Study, if you ever want to read it. It's quite dense, but you'll learn more about the paranormal in that book than you'll learn reading 20 other books. But a contact field is basically everybody or everything you've ever contacted during your investigations and more. In the world of woo-woo that we live in, everybody talks about vibrations. Well, you do have a vibration. The DC energy that goes through your body has a vibration. The blood flowing through your veins has a vibration. And there's probably other vibrations we don't even know about on a quantum level for each and every individual. You have that vibration. Like when I turn on a ghost box, it doesn't matter where I am in the world. Usually the first words that come out are, "Hi, Tim." It doesn't matter where I'm at, but they know me immediately. Why? Contact field. So when I turn on a box, it's like the old Kmart blue light special. I had that light, that lantern, that beacon right above my etheric self on the other side, and they can recognize it. And with that contact field, anybody that you've made contact with on the other side, If they ever want to find you again, they can. Not only that, but there's other people in your contact field, like your ancestors, your loved ones on the other side, your friends on the other side, or even a spirit you picked up walking through a Walmart that found you interesting. They know your vibration, and they can come through your box and talk to you at any point in time. I've got several voices that are the same no matter where I am in the world because they know who I am. And I've got other people who just chime in once every couple of years just to say, hey, I'm still here. It's interesting. And when you start to examine the idea of the paranormal from the fact that, hey, I've introduced myself to all of these entities out there, maybe there's no way to unintroduce myself. And that leads into the dangerous road of the more hauntings that you do, chances are you're going to become haunted yourself. And that's something that I always warn people about, that you're opening that door that you have no idea how to close. And you may be okay with it. You may be okay bringing a specter home at some point in time or something else. But what happens if you find a new love of your life and you get married 3 years down the road and they don't like it, or you wind up with a haunt that's haunting your kids because you ghost hunted 2 decades ago? These are things you've got to consider long run, and always be wary of that, because even though you may be okay with it, your family may not be.
What would you do in that instance?
The same thing you do with any communication on the other side. What you're doing is you're dealing with, well, I call them consciousness of an unknown origin. We don't know where they come from, but we liken them to being human beings at some point in time, but we have no proof of that. Now, if you think that when you're communicating with somebody who used to be human or is still human, just in a different form. Let's get that out there. They're still human. They still have their thoughts. They still have their personality. You're communicating with them. You're communicating with a person like they were sitting across the desk from you, only you can't see them. They are not an animal in a cage that you can say, knock 3 times or turn on this light or make this thing beep. No, you talk to them like they're humans. So if you go into a place that's haunted or your own house that is haunted, what do? You talk to them like they're humans. You address them, have a conversation, say it makes you uncomfortable, it's making your family uncomfortable. You'd appreciate it if they leave. If they haven't crossed over yet, there's that opportunity. There's, the next stage of evolution, blah, blah, blah. But talk to them. Have a civil conversation. You can't walk in there with your sage and say, demon be gone, even though it's a human spirit, and just fly out the window. It doesn't work that way. You have no control over the afterlife. And anybody who tells you that they do is full of it.
I would agree with that. But what if it's a non-human entity? You have less control.
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Non-humans are 1 in a million if you're lucky. Demon is the new black right now. Everybody wants to cry demon because
Yes.
An EVP said a bad word, so therefore it must be a demon. BS.
I get a lot of salty EVPs. I'm sorry.
It
just depends. I get a sloss often, and I get a lot of saltiness there.
Yeah,
because they're at work, right? I mean,
exactly. As in life, so too in death. There are people who drop C-bombs and F-bombs left and right. They're going to do it on the other side as well. But a demon isn't just going to say, hey, you, F off. No, a demon is going to make itself really known. And it's not going to be through an EVP. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Well, no, I'm not concerned about that with EVPs. I get frustrated when I see people that everything is a demon.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have to do this and you have to do that, and it is so rare as to be almost not part of the average person's experience at all in their life.
No,
if they're fortunate.
It is super rare. And the chances of being a paranormal investigator and encountering what we dub as a demon is just they're infinitesimally small. Demons right now are huge in popular culture because everybody watches the ghost shows. Ghost show says demon. All of a sudden, everybody is scared. They come back to watch the ghost shows because they like to be scared. It's why they watch them in the first place. Yep. Hollywood has jumped on the demon bandwagon. They've been doing it for decades now. It's selling fear. And unfortunately, when you sell fear, it becomes part of our culture. And it's become part of ghost hunting culture as a result. So most of these guys are monkey see, monkey do. They see someone on TV yelling demon. Guess what? There's got to be a demon in every house they go to. And what they wind up doing is scaring the living hell out of the people who live at a house because they're misclassifying what is there, where it could just be grandma saying, help, I want to talk to my granddaughter. And instead they're finding out it's a demon, and people are moving, people are crying, people are paying a ton of money for people who come in as demon removal services. I mean, the way the field has gotten like that, it's sickening, absolutely sickening.
Well, it is because, it's just, I don't like being afraid. I don't, and I read energy. I pick up on a lot of energy. I can usually ascertain, intention and such as that. But I don't watch stuff just to be afraid because I can't go into a situation with preconceived notions that, are being planted as you're watching somebody have a panic episode every time they walk into a haunted location.
Exactly. And preconceived notions are a huge thing. So when I investigate a place, I haven't watched a ghost show since 2010, with the exception of one episode that was filmed in my hometown and one episode that a friend of mine was in. Other than that, I haven't watched them since 2010 because I saw what was going on and it just irked me to no end. So I'm lucky. As an investigator, I don't know jack squat about the places because I haven't watched the TV shows. So I'm called out to do these conferences at all these different locations, and I don't know anything about the place. And I love it that way because my communication is more pure. I am not, I don't have the preconceived notions walking in.
Well, it's really crazy. I had that when I went to Eastern State. I'd never been there, and I had never seen it investigated. So for me, I'm walking into this monster place. I didn't even know that they still held prisoners there. They still have the death row there, as well as the lower level of security on the ones that are outside. But
you just taught me something.
Well, I was shocked. But because I couldn't figure out why I was feeling all this anger and frustration. Well, I did, because obviously people had been there, but it was just really like there were living people, not spirit people. And that's because there were living people in the structure who were being held.
And if you're an empath at all, you're going to pick up all of that anger and negativity.
Yeah. And it's just, it just is what it is. But it was fascinating to me because I kept thinking, I feel walking people, living people. So one of the people that was working there said, oh, well, yeah, they still have, the facilities here with people that are still in their appellate process. Oh, and you know what? We have to go to our break. I am so bad about that when I start wanting to enjoy a conversation with my guests. But we will be right back, and y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Melick, the host of Paraversal Universe,
every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCEC-FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, LTD, and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experienced Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so glad that you're here because this is a great conversation with a really good investigator and educator. So Tim Woolworth is who is joining me, and welcome back.
Thank you.
You know, we were talking about, being able to differentiate between the fact that there were human and non-human spirits there. No, that's not what we're talking. Living and non-living spirits in that location. And I never got any EVP in the whole area where I was close to the living people. But I got a lot of stuff that was unexpected. I got a lot of things in the chapel area. And I was just completely clueless as to what to anticipate getting. I like doing that.
Me too. And one of the cool things about ITC, and when I figured this out, and it was a revelation, you don't know who in the heck you're talking to at any given point in time. Here's the kicker. Sometimes you're communicating with people who are alive and well on this planet right now.
Yes.
Now, when I realized this, it was actually by accident. We had, in my old group back in New York, we had kind of carte blanche for this place that used to be a funeral home in the 19th century, and it was a stop on the Underground Railroad because it was right off Lake Ontario. And now it was during the Great Depression and Prohibition, they held clandestine poker games upstairs with alcohol and fun stuff like that. And now it's a pizza shop and a convenience store. We got communications because, like 6 packs of beer caught on video would just be pulled out and smashed onto the floor, and a lot of really neat stuff that was going on there. And we kind of had carte blanche to investigate there as much as we wanted, so we're able to try a lot of techniques and build a familiarity with the localized discarnate consciousnesses. And we were doing a ghost box session at a table downstairs. It was me and 2 other investigators. One of those investigators was the lady I mentioned earlier, Miss Stacy Jones. So during the ghost box session, Stacy's voice came through, and she was right next to me. So,
oh my gosh, that happened to a friend of mine at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital.
So
it's weird.
It is. I didn't realize it in real time, but we went back and recorded it, played it, And it was definitely her voice. The cool part was it was her voice speaking through the box, and then right afterwards she speaks next to me. So you have a direct comparison of her voice, and it is her voice. It happened a couple other times to me as well. A few months later, I was doing a session middle of the night, and a friend of mine who was living in California at the time, he used to be my roommate in California. We hadn't talked in forever. And I'm doing a session, and on replay, I hear his voice saying my name and then the word Karina. So I sent him an email. I'm like, Sean, you've got to hear this, man. Give me a call. This is my number. So he calls me up. He's like, that's my voice. What the heck is this? And I had to explain ghost boxes and everything. He's like, and it says Karina. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I met Karina 2 weeks ago, and they're still together. This is 9 years ago.
Oh,
so,
wow.
He was asleep at the time. So during his sleep phase, he was able to communicate through my box. So what I did is I had him record his voice as a comparison. So you can listen to the original clip and then listen to his voice. Okay. A third time that it happened, I was doing a session, and a friend of mine who was in my ghost group lived about 45 miles north of me, and she was asleep and practicing lucid dreaming at the time. And the words, "Hey, Tim," came through just crystal clear. So I had her record her voice saying, "Hey, Tim." And then I ran it through a spectrogram, and you can look at the frequency bands, and the frequency bands line up. So everybody's frequencies sound different when we speak. You look at it on a spectrogram, you have all these different bands that go. But somehow her frequency bands matched up with the bands that came through on the ghost box. But the weird kicker of that whole thing is when you think about the way speech is formed, you have air pushing a diaphragm up through your trachea, vibrating your vocal cords, all that jazz. And so basically everybody has a very unique signature. So if the signature that came through the ghost box matched the signature of her live voice, does that say that they're breathing on the other side? I don't know what that means at all.
Oh my gosh. What a concept.
Exactly. So the cool part about it, the part that just blew my mind entirely, was when I blew that out a little bit bigger to think of the whole concept of consciousness. When you're on an investigation and you say, "Hey, can you knock 3 times or whatever," and you get that knock, knock, knock. Now the question is it you creating that knock or another investigator in the room creating that knock in a spirit form, rather than an actual spirit that's at the place? That when you consider that you can record people who are alive, you have to consider everything you've ever thought you knew about communicating with disincarnate consciousness has to be thrown out the window, because you do not know who you're communicating with. You could be communicating with your fellow investigator.
That is so bizarre. I am actually starting some work relevant to that with my co-researcher, and it's going to be so interesting, because we're actually looking at consciousness with abilities and communication. All of that's going to tie in to this concept right here. I'm so excited. We'll talk about that later. But that was not a Wonder Lab. That was a short person. So I apologize. We will take Heidi off the air. But I'm just amazed. I think that someone who even has that concept open, that, okay, so these don't have to be spirits. You're seeing stuff happen. It's like my friend who heard his voice come across the voice box, who, he was sitting there with 4 or 5 other people, and it just blew everything away, their whole concept. And there were some really good ITC people there. So it was astounding. Everybody was befuddled.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been a while. But
I've got all those clips on ITC Voices. If you read the article "Projection of Consciousness," you can read the theory behind it and hear the clips yourself.
well, I am definitely going to be reading the theory behind it because I want to see if it is going to be something that we're actually looking at, because then I'll need to call you and ask you about that and try to work on that correlation. But when you started doing this and you started going through this different equipment, and then you got in the hang of the equipment, and now all of a sudden voices are just coming at you randomly that you didn't anticipate, or experiences were coming at you randomly. You had mentioned the knocking. Have you had an experience where you felt that it was a living human that was projecting that? Or could you ascertain that?
Myself, I don't think I've had that particular experience where it's a living human knocking, but I can't say for certain. But meanwhile, there are many people who have. It's called poltergeist phenomenon, where most people from the parapsychological aspect of it, not the paranormal, not the ghost hunter, but a parapsychologist, they call it RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Psychokinesis meaning that it is projected from a human.
Yes.
And as we know, it typically centers around somebody going through puberty or somebody going through dreadful times that they're not used to, and then it disappears pretty much immediately when a situation resolves itself. So I haven't had that experience, but people who have had poltergeist experiences certainly have.
I just find that fascinating because when you're looking at, especially an adolescent, the only PK case I've had was with an adolescent female living in the home, and she would not go in the home while we were investigating. But she knew it was happening, stemming from her, but no one else did, she thought. And it was so difficult for her to accept that this was, that she was creating this manifestation. So even though it goes away, and they have that stigma in their mind for a long time, they feel that they're stigmatized. When you have been on investigations where you felt that that was a possibility, how did you cope with that with your client? Or did you?
It's hard to deal with. Like, we had this one client who was manifesting her haunt via very sky-high EMF. She was basically just living next to it. She had ungrounded wall warts plugged into ungrounded cables, just chains and chains, and there wasn't a single space in the house that had less than 80 milligauss ambient. Next to her head in bed was over 300. Oh. And she was manifesting stuff like she said things would be getting knocked over. There was a specter that would just grimace and growl at her and all kinds of stuff like that, but it was all manifested in her head. And I tried to explain what was going on. I sent them articles, all of that stuff. And this place came to me as a recommendation, and it was a metal-sided trailer, which made it much, much worse inside. Right. Yes. And I sent her all this information, and she didn't believe it. She wanted to believe that her place was genuinely haunted, and she went around to badmouth me and actually contacted a bunch of other teams who basically told her, you were working with one of the best, so that's your answer.
There you go. Did she ever get past that? I wonder.
No idea.
That's hard to let go of.
It's not my concern,
No, it's not, but it does give one to ponder.
Yeah.
But, I am having way too much fun with this stuff. Because you are the perfect person to ask any kind of question relevant to this about. You've got so much experience in ITC, but you've also taught yourself so much else.
Yeah.
I am really enjoying this opportunity. And we are not but a few seconds away from going out for our top of the hour news break. So hopefully this news break is going to be outdated. That's what we're hoping, because we'd like for that situation to have drawn to a close in Philadelphia. But I can't wait until we come back. So I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're able to be here and to have this conversation.
Thank you. It's been very fun so far.
Yes, thank you. And with that being said, we're going to go out, and this is the time that it's a great idea to stretch your legs, fill up your tea glass, your beer stein, whatever your favorite is, and come right back. We'll see you on the flip side.
This is a Fox News alert. Hundreds of gunshots. I'm Lee Silasana. A gunman remains barricaded at a home in Philadelphia, taking aim at officers who went there to serve a warrant. Fox's Gernal Scott has more live.
At least 6 officers have been shot, according to a tweet from Philadelphia police. The shooting began late this afternoon, about 4:30. Even within the last hour, shots were still being heard in that North Philadelphia neighborhood. Residents like this man say this has the whole community on edge.
Very scared. Very, very scared, because it could be a stray bullet just come flying out the house. You never know.
Police also say another officer was hurt in a crash responding to the scene. A negotiator is trying to talk the shooter out. ATF agents are on the scene, and the president, a state away in New Jersey, has been briefed, Lisa.
Gernal, Texas Governor Greg Abbott announcing the state is adding manpower to gang investigations surrounding white nationalist groups after the mass shooting in El Paso that left 22 people dead. And he says the state will create a new domestic terrorism unit. He says will help root out the extremist ideologies that fuel hatred and violence in the state. Recession fears fueling a huge sell-off on Wall Street. The Dow lost 800 points, the Nasdaq off 242. The S&P minus 85.
The real whopper came in from the U.S. bond market. The interest rate on 10-year Treasury bonds today briefly fell below the rate on 2-year bonds. Now, in a normal world, an investor would expect to be paid more in interest for taking on the added risk of owning bonds with longer maturities. But now the opposite is occurring, just as it did before the recessions that hit in 1991, 2001, and 2008.
Fox's Connell McShane. Federal prosecutors say a woman charged with a data breach at Capital One may have hacked more than 30 other organizations. Paige Thompson of Seattle was arrested last month. This is Fox News.
At TD Ameritrade, they're reinventing how you invest. Whether you want to place a trade on Facebook Messenger or get market news from your smart speaker, TD Ameritrade's technology is designed to bring the market to you. See what's new at tdameritrade.com/innovation. Member SIPC.
One of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers suing his estate using New York's just enacted Child Victims Act. Jennifer Arose, who is now 32, filed the suit against the estate, Epstein's former girlfriend, and 3 unnamed former Epstein employees. A not guilty plea from an Army veteran accused of assaulting a teenager, Kurt Brockway, claims the 13-year-old refused to move his hat during the national anthem at a rodeo in Montana, and that the teen cursed at him when he asked him to remove it. His attorney telling a local newspaper Brockway suffered a traumatic brain injury from a car crash while he was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, and he believed he was doing what President Trump wanted him to do. Witnesses say Brockway picked the boy up by his neck and slammed into the ground. He suffered a skull fracture, according to court records. Portland, Oregon, gearing up for what could be a weekend of violence with far left and far right groups planning to rally.
A Proud Boys organizer and a former InfoWars writer are reportedly behind Saturday's planned demonstrations in Portland against Antifa. This is not the first time there have been Antifa-related protests in the city, and things have become violent before. City leaders like Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler say all of them are not welcome.
Things have started to take a darker turn. People have been abusing that right, using the guise of free speech to commit acts of violence.
No officers have the day off on Saturday. Portland's police chief says they will not pick sides. They are only focused on behavior. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
New Orleans police say they've made an arrest in an attack on comedian Andy Dick outside a nightclub over the weekend. 48-year-old David Hale was taken into custody this morning and booked on suspicion of second-degree battery and simple battery. The comedian claims he was punched early Saturday morning and says he was unconscious for 15 minutes. I'm Lisa Lacera, and this is Fox News.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You are listening to Paranormal Experienced Radio with Kat Hobson here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm joined tonight by my guest, Tim Woolworth. We have been having a great discussion, and as most of our listeners know, I am a note taker as we go through this, and I am already, through my second page. But that's a good thing. I love learning. And Tim, you're a great person to learn from. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for the compliment.
Well, call them as I see them. It's really funny to me. Do you remember when we met?
Yeah, it was at Scarefest, right?
It was at Scarefest, and you had on the Paranormal Study Study shirt. And I was so interested because I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, and at that point, the site hadn't launched yet.
Yes. And so I was glad that I asked. Because then when I got back downstairs, because we kind of passed in the hallway, and when I got back downstairs, I went looking and got information about you. And was like, well, I like that guy. That's pretty neat. So then I started researching you. I like your work. And it's just really, you're an all-around, well-balanced researcher.
Thank you. That's one of the best compliments I could receive.
Oh. You're welcome. It's true. But, I was reading through, before we move on, I was reading through your Ghost Boxes page. And, aside from the Frank's boxes and the Shack Hacks and, well, the PSBs, there's also, you say that there are a lot of options that you can get, like off-the-shelf radios that can be modified to scan like the Ghost Box does. And there's some that are like $10.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're getting harder and harder to find. The boxes used to be readily available. You could buy them for almost nothing. But they moved more towards Chinese production and using ribbon connections as opposed to standard soldered wires. So it became a lot more difficult to modify some of these boxes. They are out there. You have to search. And there is a list on ITC Voices that hasn't been updated in a long time. But people have been updating it via the comments, which is a fantastic thing where people are going on saying, hey, I just found this particular radio that I modified.
Well, I think that's great. I have found that my co-researcher and investigator also does that with cameras. I have two basically knockoffs of the little heroes. And he put drone cameras in them. So I could see a gnat poot on a fence post across a pasture with those. I mean, they're such good lenses. I just love that.
Very
cool. I think it's cool.
It is.
And he's always assuming I can do that. And I'm like, Yeah, but you don't mind, right?
One of the fascinating things of the age that we live in is that we are constantly hacking technology and using it for other purposes. And there is no other field that I can think of besides the paranormal that hacks basically everything or repurposes everything for the field.
Everything. I mean, it's just crazy. But it's interesting because when you come across somebody somewhere, you've got all these neat ideas that people are tossing out. That's one of the things I love because, I'm in Birmingham. I don't get a lot of cons down this way. We're trying to fix that, but it's, just a work in progress now. So when I get to Gettysburg or like anywhere else, I go up to Ohio a lot to that old Paulding jail because I like investigating there. And a friend owns it, so it's neat to see different things happen. She's very into the experimentation of different practices and equipment. So it's fascinating for me to go and be around people who do what I'm interested in, but have a community that works, close in hand together to toss ideas off and stuff. That's why I use web pages so much, is to find people that are having new ideas and stuff. But it's amazing what people hack to try to get spiritual activity caught on camera.
Or even measuring spiritual activity. In the upcoming issue of the SSE, which is they produce a free online quarterly that's dedicated to the paranormal. There was a gentleman who hooked up a measuring mechanism for a Ouija board to be able to measure the pressure that goes on it. So we can see actually whether it's you or whether it's spiritual influence. There's all kinds of fun stuff going on.
Isn't that a neat idea?
Yeah. I
mean, I don't like them. I don't use them because somebody asked me once, well, why won't you use a Ouija board, but you'll use a spirit box? And I'm like, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a mind thing. I don't like the concept of a Ouija board.
The Ouija board came out of the planchette. The planchette came out of automatic writing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just this whole history that goes back, and it's just you hack your automatic writing and make it into a planchette. You hack the planchette and take out the writing aspect and put it into a Ouija board. It just goes and goes and goes. And now we have, and then you go into like 2000 with EVP Maker, where you can, with software, be able to record phrases and break them down into individual constituent parts of an exact measurement. Like you want to break up this phrase or this entire this monologue, you want to break it up into bits that are 1/10 of a second and then scramble them. That's a revision of what the Ouija board was doing. And then the Ghost Box is a revision of that. And now we have all kinds of software in your phone that tries to emulate what a Ghost Box can do. We're just constantly moving forward with technology.
I know that you have utilized, whether just testing or actively using, some of those apps. And I have several of them on my phone. And I get confused on a couple of them. They seem quite complicated to try to get the settings adjusted in and stuff, and I really have not had enough idiot time to play with them and use them appropriately because they're coming out constantly. But what are some that you feel are not so heavily programmed that they would be able to give you an accurate experience?
Well, first of all, any app can give you an experience. Basically, when you dedicate yourself to a form of spirit communication, typically communication is going to ensue. This was the case with the Fish Harbox, where they were using custom software in fax machines back in the 80s before a lot of this technology was available. So that's how spirit communicated with them. Yeah, this is early ITC stuff. But applications, there are a lot of them that are, in my humble opinion, garbage. It's kind of the same thing, just regurgitated over and over and over and over again with a different skin on it and a couple different knobs and a different sound bank. What you want to look for in an application is something that truly randomizes audio. And I would put my foot down and say that 95% of the apps out there don't have the capability of properly randomizing audio. Full phrases are going in, stuff like that.
Yes.
There's only one app, and I've tried dozens, one app that I'll continually use, and it's EchoVox. And the reason I use EchoVox is because the creator, what he did is he had basically entire book cut up into microseconds. We're talking hundreds to thousands of a second. And what happened is it's a true randomized audio device. It will grab, depending on how many channels you use, several pieces of randomized audio, all these microseconds, blend them together and spit it out. Now, the cool part is when it gets spit out, if you've got it set up right, you've got an external speaker, and it goes through that external speaker and then comes back, and the phone or the tablet that you're using has a microphone on it. So all of a sudden you create a loop of audio in the background that's real live audio that blends in with the garble that's being spit out by the machine. And the responses are stunning that you get through EchoVox. Yes. You get full names, phrases, all kinds of stuff. As I mentioned earlier, with crossing over, I deal a lot with what are called technicians. One of my technicians is Tom, and one of my first sessions on EchoVox, I had somebody say, help, help, help. And so I'm like, okay, so this is happening on an application as well, which was, cross confirmation with what we were getting on Ghost Boxes and EVP, which was the first thing that said, oh, there's something magical about this app. But then I asked for Tom. And then all of a sudden the word Tom started coming through the box, through the garble, spit out from the box. And I asked for Tom, and the application itself said, here comes Tom. They call him Tech, which just gave me cross confirmation with how we're calling them techs through Ghost Boxes, and it just blew my mind.
That would blow my mind. That is a holy wow.
And that video is, I think, on the site, and it's also on the much outdated YouTube channel for ITC Voices as well.
Well, I am going to check that out because I missed that, and I'm not going to. I'm going to find it. We have a question over in Spreaker, and that is, how do you feel about the Spiritus app?
I haven't used the Spiritus app. I've heard good things about it. I know Keith. Keith is a great guy. I'm sure his product's good, but I've pretty much retracted from using applications these days. I use EchoVox alone and Ghost Boxes because when I travel and I'm doing these conferences and public events, I want stuff that I know is going to work and stuff that I can trust, stuff that is true randomized audio.
Yes. I was at an event and was part of the, leading a group. Just kind of happened that way. And somebody pulled out Ghost Radar.
Oh, jeez.
I know. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm part of this team that's supposed to be leading this group, and they're going to think I endorse this. And I just finally, I kept my mouth shut while the presentation was going on and stuff. And I said, I have found that your body will judge much better where spirits are than Ghost Radar does. And if you will just run a voice recorder while you're doing a session, your EVPs will give you much more factual and in-depth information than this app does. So I didn't slam the person showing the app as a professional tool, but I was just trying to distance myself from it a little bit because I can't stand that app.
Well, I've come to the point where I don't care if somebody's using garbage next to me, if they're a paid person going there, but when it is somebody who's representing the field,
yes.
No, I kind of call it out. And I was at an event, and at the end of the night, as one of the speakers, I was paired up with somebody from the Ghost Hunters television show who brought no equipment with them and basically had a flashlight and was talking about how the flashlight was a great means of communication. And when it came to my part of the presentation before we started the hunting, I just basically called out directly how you've got a recorder in your phone, and that will do much better than a flashlight could any day, especially in hot weather like this where the flashlights have been known to be faulty.
That, I'm sure, was an interesting moment because I know only 2 people that could have been. So that's interesting. And they're adamant about it, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
but, a lot of these people, they come to these cons, they're paid a lot of money, and they don't bring any equipment with them. That's a problem in the field for these people who are paid ridiculous sums of money, and they're on TV, and most of them can't even bring, a recorder with them or anything with a light and beep to entertain the crowd. There are a few that I've worked with who are great. They bring tablets and software and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so it's not uniform across the board, but that's what I've seen at so many of these events.
And, it just kind of gives you pause, because it's like people are paying to see you and learn from you. You should be teaching.
Absolutely.
And so, because people admire, for whatever reason, I don't get the flip out about celebrity, because I know an awful lot of people, and you do too, who are outstanding in this field who have never walked on a set.
Absolutely.
And, I do Skype interviews all the time, but I'm not everybody's Kool-Aid either. So that's okay. But it's very frustrating when you see people that are treating it like that. I would be frustrated myself. We have another question for you. And the question is, we have to go to break. Then we'll ask the question. We will be right back. Thank y'all.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. So let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in in the inexplicable world around us. And we're talking about them here, looking for answers. On WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. I am so glad you're here to share this show with me, with Tim Woolworth. I am having the best time and getting so many questions answered, and we have one coming out of the chat room. So, are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Sherry would like to know, what recorder do you use? What is your favorite?
Currently, I use a Roland recorder. It's RC4, RC6, something like that. It's one that's used for field recording in video. And I absolutely love the device. When I bought it, it was pretty expensive, and it's come down because it's an older model now. But it's 96, 24-bit, 96 kilohertz. You can run 2 XLR microphones into it. You have up to 4 onboard internal microphones, and you can run a mini line mic into it, and it all has a mixer. So I can set up this mic and run mics all around the room. And
that is so cool.
See if you can record from different locations. And one of the cool things, I have a couple of older recorders that I've used over the years as well that I bring with me from time to time, but they're not my favorite. But the cool thing is, when you're at a location, you can set down 3 recorders right next to each other in a room, and sometimes only one of them will record an EVP. And that's inexplicable. There's no explanation for that I have seen at this point in time. So basically, try your luck with any recorder that you think is worthwhile. What I would highly recommend is that if you're looking for a recorder, make sure it records at least 16-bit, which is CD quality, and WAV format is preferable. WAV is uncompressed, which gives you the best recording quality that you can get for whatever recorder that you have. And a lot of recorders will say that, it's using PCM, which is uncompressed, which is incorrect. It's a compressed wave format is what PCM is. So if you're looking for a new recorder, just look for something that's 16-bit wave, and you'll be okay. There's a lot of other specific stuff you can look at in recorders that can really be confusing, but I did write an article on what to look at in a recorder years and years and years ago on ITC Voices that breaks down all of those little things like sample rate and bit depth and all that stuff if you're really interested.
Well, I think she's really interested. So I've investigated with her before, and she's very good. And she's always positive. Spirits love her. And I'm putting the website in the chat room. So I am, excuse the typing.
No problem.
But I wanted them to be able to have that to take it with them. So, I think that's really terrific that you have these sites where people can just go, and you're giving them all this information, and it's all free.
Yeah.
And it's all just to advance the field and advance the study.
That's been my whole goal since day one, is putting up a mechanism for people to learn quality stuff, separate the wheat from the chaff, and just go and learn on your own. And education is critical if you're going to make any difference in the field. And the cool thing is the more that you educate yourself, not just on ITC or EVP, which is actually a form of ITC, but if you go outside of that and you start to look at, cryptids and UFOs and even spontaneous human combustion and all kinds of fun stuff, eventually you'll be able to pull a little bit But from each area, as you educate yourself more to get a bigger perspective on the field, and the more that you learn, the less that you know. And that's why education is so important, because everybody, when they're starting out, thinks they know everything. The truth is, you know absolutely nothing. I barely know anything. I've just scratched the surface. I mean, I look at some of the people who are the progenitors of this field, like John Keel, who actually he almost went insane at the end, and he just gave up on it because the more he learned, the less he knew, over and over and over. And that is the mantra of this particular field. So learn far, learn wide, read everything.
Well, this is a great place to start, because, you know, I've been through it. I've used a good bit of it. But, you know, you even have ghost box schematics.
Oh, yeah.
You have all kinds of things. You know, when you come to the resources, you have published resources, where to buy ITC, the history, quotes. I mean, that doesn't sound like, you know, to some people it may not sound like that's that big a deal. It's huge. I know no place else that just puts this out here and says, here, please run with this. Let us know what you think. And, you know, you ask for input. It's just terrific.
Yeah, and ITC Voices is, at this point, it's almost been denigrated a little bit because of what's been being done with Paranormal Study, which I realized with ITC Voices, the education of the ITC field was absolutely critical. I put it up at a time when no one knew anything about ITC. No one was even ascribing the term of ITC to anything. And my site helped change that. And ITC, for those who don't know, because we didn't even basically scratch the surface of ITC, is instrumental transcommunication. And instrumental transcommunication is basically the use of any instrument, which any electronic instrument, which can be, you know, everything from a tape to whatever, the use of any electronic instrument to facilitate the recording and playback of communications from discarnate conscious entities. So that's my definition of it. And basically what it says is you can use anything, a recorder, for example, to record an EVP, be able to review it and play it back. So that's what ITC is the ability to communicate with the other side, record it, and play it back. And it's critical. A lot of the stuff that's out there right now, it doesn't allow you to record what you're getting. And so you have to use other mechanisms to record it. And that is absolutely critical. If you ever investigate or do anything in any form of investigation and you're not recording it, either video or audio, you're doing yourself a huge disservice because you're not going to learn from it.
Well, I mean, why would you even break out equipment if you weren't going to record?
Well, I look at, you know, the modern day. There, for example, something called the Estes method, which everybody's raving about. I wrote an article on that on Paranormal Study, where basically you have somebody who's blindfolded and listening only to a ghost box. And while other investigators in the room are asking questions, the person who is monitoring the ghost box can't hear that, so they just speak about what they hear from the box itself. But guess what? No one's recording the audio of the box in this method. It's a huge flaw.
I know. We actually had tried using the Gansfield method, which is very similar. And, and we were recording. So it was a very strange thing because I didn't know how to do that. My partner did, so that worked out well. But I don't know. You have to be getting the information. You can't make an analytical decision on something without the data.
Correct.
You have to have the data.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I just don't know why you would do it. Why would you would even be bothering without trying to have all the evidence that you can?
Well, there's a lot of people doing it right now, which is why I wrote that particular article to try to educate, because it's real simple to record the audio at the same time, discreetly.
Well, yes, it is. I think one of my favorite things about what I've seen of your thought process, what I've seen of your work, which actually is quite a bit. I'm very interested that you just seemed so, this is it. This is me. Here we go. No competition, no real discussion. Let's just talk. Let's just check this out. You're going to like this. I appreciate that.
Well, I was raised to be frank, and materials and education, it's also designed to be frank. I come from an academic background, and I've learned that what is on the page is what is on the page, and you can't go into this field without knowing what's on the page. You can put your interpretation on what's on the page, but if you don't know what's on there in the first place, you're going in blind.
Well, you wind up comparing apples to zebras. And,
exactly.
That doesn't solve anything, and it doesn't get you any further.
And I've watched this field evolve over the years, where people are, talking about experiments now that have been documented and done many times over and over that they don't even know about, because a lot of the people don't know the literature that's out there, because it requires work, it requires discipline. And that's why I'm trying to bridge that gap of work to bring the sources directly to investigators themselves. And when I did ITC Voices, it was all about ITC. But now Paranormal Study is a little bit bigger. It's much bigger in scope, which allows me to get as much information as I can as one person out to everybody. And it's quite a task, but the site is still rather young, and I can't wait to see what it's going to evolve to be in 10 years.
I can't even imagine what that site is going to evolve to be in. I mean, that is not even 10 years. Not even 10 years. It's growing by leaps and bounds now.
It has, and our social media fan base is just off the charts. My social media partner, Jeremy, he's been targeting markets in the world that aren't typically targeted by U.S. teams and investigators. We are reaching out to Asia, Philippines, Africa, all kinds of different places. And these people, Middle East, they have a huge thirst for the paranormal that nobody is addressing. So the other day on my social media, I decided to do a little experiment. And I just asked a simple question. I said, well, I know you're here from all over the world. Why don't you tell me a little legend about your section of the world? And all of these people started writing in, and the comparisons were astounding to lore we have in the Western world, where the mechanisms and the type of phenomena that are happening all have the same thing happening here, only they ascribe different things to it. Like there was a person from Nigeria talking about a black demon baby. They called it a bush baby, where basically if you stole the bush baby's mat and slept on it for a night, you'd be given a bunch of riches. That totally correlates to the leprechaun myth. And there's different fairy myths that work over there as well. There's vengeful ghosts. There's all kinds of stuff that are happening all around the world that we don't know about. And I learned a lot just by asking that simple question and how it can be correlated to what we know from our Western point of view. And so this is just on the social media. So I've got to learn how to try to incorporate that stuff into the site itself. The site itself focuses on articles, mainly articles, articles left and right. And every month I do a paranormal news roundup, which if you're part of the mailing list, you'll get updated. If not, it pops up on our social media at the end of the month. And there will be like 60 to 100 articles that I've read through and parsed and given a 2 to 4 sentence summary of the article with a link so you can go learn from it. I've put up hundreds of articles since this site's been up just for people to learn from. And that's why it's growing, because there is that thirst for real education, and you can't get real education watching a ghost hunting show.
True that, and you can't get it in most of the quote paranormal studies classes either. Not your classes, but the ones that the junior colleges offer on the side with their psychology and stuff of that nature. It's just not anywhere near the same.
Oh no,
it's
I
like
know the
somebody
person
just
who
shows
teaches
up and
it
says,
here.
"Here, let me teach that."
I know the person who teaches it here, and I wouldn't want anyone learning from her.
Well, I think maybe I'm glad I don't know who that is, but as long as it's not me, it's golden. I just love the passion because, A, you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't passionate about it. And it shows in your voice and in your work ethic because you are all about educating some people.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
it. That's it. It's about education, and it costs me an arm and a leg to do it, but it's something that I'm willing to do for people.
Well, this person is appreciative. So, and I know that the people in chat are as well. What is your favorite trend that you see coming?
Ooh.
Oh,
I have,
yes.
Yeah. Coming. Let's see here. I don't know off the top of my head. That one's got me a little bit for a loop. What I'm really liking is people going more towards cryptid research. It's become more of a fascination. We've got people caving for goblins. We've got Bigfoot groups all around the country. We've got people looking for elves. It's kind of fun right now. People are actually giving some respect to cryptozoology. The other thing, over the last, what's it been, 20 months, ufology has gone through the roof.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I am just stoked that ufology is out there for everybody right now. Unfortunately, they're still getting all their information from the mainstream media. They're not reading Jacques Vallée and everybody else, but they might get to that point, which makes me happy. I'm really, really happy with the turn for ufology. It is become a media event with ufology right now, which, may make it a joke in the end. And there's a lot of questions as to whether the releases that we're getting from the government are just a replay of what was happening in the 80s. And it's all government feeding the masses information. We don't know.
Yeah. I have questions about that too. And one of my good friends is one of the biggest voices for To the Stars. And
oh, really?
Yeah, she is very enthused with everything that's happening. And I'm like, well,
it's kind of a cult, though.
It is kind of a cult. And, the same, you have people coming out of the Pentagon who are talking about this, and that's okay. But you're not really getting clear statements, and you've got 3 seconds of a video, maybe 10 seconds, and that's it. Yeah,
but when you realize that, the government people at Homeland Security and other departmental heads were just briefed by the government on some of these videos, and you have Senator Mike, can't remember his last name, Congressman Mark Walker.
Yes, thank you.
Mark Walker comes out and he writes a letter to the Secretary of the Navy saying, I just saw some videos. Why in the hell are we not looking in at this? This is a serious thing.
I've got a copy of that letter. That was awesome.
Yeah, I put that on the last monthly news roundup, and it's just it's going places, and
it is.
We'll see where it winds up.
Something that fascinates me though is that it's starting to become a feeding on each other thing too. If they can just keep it, I know, but if they can just keep the organizations that have been trying to document and weren't getting the input, but from the governmental places. If Harry Reid hadn't opened his mouth and come out about this stuff, then nobody would know anything about it.
Very true.
It would still be hidden. And I think it's so interesting that TTSA was set up a couple of years ahead of that announcement. So that's interesting to me. But I always look for those funky little things because I think that's fun. We do have another question for you. if you're up for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right after this break. So just hang in there and we'll get right to this.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Paranormal Experience Radio. I am your host, Kat Hobson, with my guest, Tim Woolworth. And this is our last segment, so if you have questions, pop them in that chat, just like this one. What was your favorite place that you've investigated, and what happened that made it be your favorite place? Right.
Rather large, and it was broken up into several small groups. So I was working with 3 or 4 other individuals, and we all had different stations that we'd investigate. There was a bunch of cabins out back from when the church took over the ground and it became a camp for boys and stuff like that. So there were several locations, and the final location that I investigated was the house for the help down the road. And we regrouped after every investigation on the site. We had an hour at each location, and everybody told me, "Oh, this place is happening. There's a lot going on." And I said, and every one of them said, "Oh, wait till Tim gets here. He's got equipment that he'll be able to talk to you with." So for some reason, they recognized me as soon as I walked into the place. It was dark. I was holding a Maglite, not set for the flashing thing that everybody does, but just a standard Maglite in my hand, and it starts flashing in my hand. And
oh my goodness.
Yes, and I felt completely enveloped in cold. It was measurable. And I was like, okay, we're going to have some activity here. So we sit down and we start doing an EVP session. And, and while you're doing EVP, it's quiet in between questions. But in the background, you could just hear this burble, like conversations were happening.
Oh, wow.
And it was really weird because it was almost loud enough to where you could hear words. So one of the investigators, he went out, he walked all around the house. There was no one out there. It was a single floor. There was nobody upstairs. There was no upstairs, single floor. There's no other way for voices to get in there. It was that active. So I start my ghost box session after EVP and various techniques for about 40 minutes. I start warming up the ghost box, blah, blah, blah. And because it was way down the way, and I said we had like an hour for each location, it was like a 7-minute walk to get there. So I had 10 minutes of a ghost box session basically to do. So I turn on the ghost box, and immediately I start getting screams for help and all this other stuff. And I try to parse what's going on there, right, and figure out what's happening. And eventually, it's soldiers saying that they were shot. They were in Cherry Valley, and one of the guys in my group was big into history. He's like, oh, Cherry Valley is just a few miles from here, was the site of the Cherry Valley Massacre, where the British hired Mohawks to come in the middle of the night, and they killed a bunch of Revolutionary War soldiers. And I think that's what was happening. So I started to do my crossover session where I asked them to get everybody together who wanted help. And then all of a sudden, the front door opens up. It's the group leader, and she was like, oh, time to wrap it up. We've got to go. Our time's up. I told them we'd be out by 3 a.m. We've got to go now. So I was like, well, I made the biggest mistake I've ever made ghost boxing. What I'd said was, hey, guys, I'll turn on my box tomorrow and talk to you, and we'll finish this.
Oh, dear.
Big mistake. I was still wet behind the ears. Big mistake. What happened is, as soon as I picked up my flashlight, it starts flashing like mad in my hand again. So I put it in my case, grab another one, flashing like mad in my hand, enveloped in cold. I just felt that there was something around me. We get up to the top of the hill by the cars. They measure. It's an August night. The temperature around me was a couple degrees colder than what it was in the ambient air just 10 feet away. I had measurable cold circling me. So they tried crystals, Reiki, all this fun stuff. And I realized, well, crap, I've got an attachment.
Yeah.
So I went home, and for 3 days, I could not move. Basically, all of my energy was gone. I basically woke up, would eat and go to the bathroom and pass out again. Called in sick to work. I had no energy. On the third day, I passed out. So this would have been a Tuesday in my chair. Once again, I was sleeping like 20 hours a day. I wake up, and I collected African masks at that point. And one of the masks had flown off the wall and had rotated 90 degrees and was sitting on the floor facing me. And that was them, the people that I told I would talk to, basically saying goodbye, because I didn't feel anything after that. But that place always sticks with me because it's the place that I had my biggest lesson, where you don't have control over the paranormal and you can bring it home.
Wow, that is a huge lesson. I do want to let people know, because we had a glitch with your audio as we were coming through that section. You did not name the place.
No, I did not.
It was simply a large mansion on a property large enough to have a house for the help. And the owner is a magnate who died on the Titanic.
Yeah, Pittsburgh steel magnate. I did not name the place because it's a private property and no one else has been in there since. But it's in New York by a lake. I'll just put it that way.
Well, that's okay, because now we've got someone in chat saying, oh my goodness, need to know that location. It's like, no, you're not going to. Have to respect the privacy.
Absolutely.
So, is there another one that taught you a lesson as important? Or
yeah,
that was pretty serious.
No, another place that taught me a serious lesson. We were down by Gettysburg. We usually stay at various bed and breakfasts outside of town, and basically we'll take over a bed and breakfast or two and investigate. And this one bed and breakfast, I had never been investigated before. It was on the Mason-Dixon line, and they had slaves. So, but on the Mason-Dixon line, they were pretty much 20 steps to freedom. So in the basement, they chained the slaves to the wall every night, so they couldn't leave. And during the day, they'd unchain them, and they could be under the watchful eye while they worked the crops. In the basement, you go downstairs, and there's a little black doll on a rocking chair with a note that said, this doll belonged to my great grandmother. She was a slave here, and we just wanted to bring it back home. And my mistake was I decided to do a session in that basement. There was a big table down there. I should mention there had been an exorcism done at this place at one point in time. A section was boarded off and still had the markings of the cross and everything on the board. And yeah, it had been exorcised. But I sat down at a table, and there were 3 females on either side of the table. So it was me and 6 ladies. The other end of the table was blank. So no one was sitting at the other end of the table. And I decided to basically address any slaves that might be down there as a white man from the head of the table in their quarters. And this obviously no one had ever done that before. It had never been investigated before. And what happened really rattled me. The room became a darker than dark on the other end of the table. And everybody noticed it at once, and the darkness came across the table right at me, struck me in the chest, and just filled me with a fear that I had never felt on an investigation before. I got up, and I went outside, grounded myself as quick as possible, and said I wouldn't go back in the place. So what I learned at that particular location is you have to show... Well, you always want to show respect, but you have to be respectful of the circumstances that the people who were there lived in. And I was not being respectful of those circumstances because I was in their domain as a white man sitting at the head of the table when I had no power over the situation. They did.
And let you know.
Exactly.
That is more than a little freaky, Tim, honestly.
It was. Absolutely.
How was it when you went back in?
Oh, I just went back in and had people bring my equipment up from the basement. I packed up and said I'm going over to my place because luckily I wasn't staying in that particular bed and breakfast. I was staying in the other one. We had switched for the night for investigation purposes.
Good plan. Good plan. So we have one more question if you're up for it.
Oh, of course.
Okay. Do you carry any protection or crystals with you?
The only thing that I carry with me is a little bit of black tourmaline. I don't know why. It was gifted to me, and I don't know if it offers me any protection whatsoever. I really don't really ascribe to crystal protection. I don't think it does anything. What black tourmaline does is it's one of the few crystals out there that actually generates its own minute electrical signal. So I think that adds a little balance. I don't know. It's just a personal belief. I can't give any science to that whatsoever, but I feel it adds a little bit of balance to me as it's sitting over my heart.
I like that answer. I don't know why people are always telling me that I need to have amethyst. And I'm like, well, I don't need to be calmed. I'm calm, I promise. But the black tourmaline I like also. I do. Actually, I think red jasper is beautiful. Red jasper does not like me very much. I actually was burned and had a burn on my finger from a piece that I picked up, and I was like, okay.
Oh, that's crazy.
Won't be using this.
Yeah.
But and my birthstone actually appears to run from me. So my grandmother would, she bought me a ring and it would just disappear. So she bought a few of them and they all ran away. I mean, it wasn't like I was being irresponsible with them. They just would not be there.
Or you had an entity of some kind that really liked them. One of the two. Object translocation is one of those fascinating things. You never know where they're going to pop up.
Well, that blows me away. That always blows me away because we only have 2 minutes, but I'll just say I have an Apple Watch that I had on when I fell in Key West. When I came home, it was not in my luggage. I assumed it had been stolen because my husband just threw it in the suitcase. I gave up on trying to find it, went and bought a Fitbit, still the big face so I could see it. Wore it, took it off the other day to wash dishes. Haven't been able to find it since. Just set it on the counter to wash dishes. I got really frustrated. I said, I have to have something. I was clearing my dresser off, which I do all the time. When I was having to be in bed, my daughter-in-law did it all the time. My Apple Watch was on my dresser that had been cleared off constantly because I can't stand all the stuff on it. Yeah. I still haven't found the Fitbit yet, so it'll show up when I need it. But it's just weird how stuff happens like that. One of my friends told me I had house elves.
Yeah, it's possible, or it could be you in another time frame who has moved it around, and somehow you're jumping between two different time frames.
Well, that would not surprise me. I've had a very strange year, and that's okay because I had the year.
Fair enough.
I always love that. I mean, I just love life, and it didn't kill me. So one of my friends posted a thing about survival this afternoon. I was like, oh yeah, always try to survive. But, you have been one of the most interesting guests that I've had in quite some time. I have enjoyed this conversation.
I have too. It's been a real pleasure. You've been a great host, and I love the questions from your audience.
Thank you. I have a great audience. They're very neat people, and they're very inquisitive people, and they're investigators, so they know what to ask when they get the chance to have someone like you. So it matters to them. And that being said, we're out of time. Although if that glitch was long enough, we might have a minute or two. But and that's okay. Yeah, gotta love live radio. But I'm going to put out there that if you want to be part of Fate Magazine, you are welcome to come over there. There is so much more we did not cover. And
wow, that's amazing.
You want to do it? We'll schedule something.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Okay. Well, we will work on that. And to all of you listening, I will let you know when we've got a chance to get him on. So, thanks. But I was going to, Brenda in chat said, but I was late, no questions, so you need to come back. Okay, we're going to bring him back. But I am going to actually be going to the UFO Congress in Phoenix in a couple of weeks. So when you brought up the ufology, I was like, yeah, that's going to be an interesting experience because people from all sides of that aisle are lecturing.
Yeah, so, the only thing I can't stand about ufology right now is the fact that Richard Doty is getting pulpit time. If you don't know who Richard Doty is, look him up. There's a video on Netflix, Mirror Men, Mirage Men, something like that. Watch that. That's a good grounding if you don't know who Doty is.
Okay, and what was the Netflix guy?
No, it's a documentary about Doty.
Okay, on Netflix.
Yeah.
Got it. And everybody, thank y'all so much for being here because, you're the reason that we do these things. Y'all are the reason that Tim does all this hard work and shares it with all of us. And y'all are the reason that I come out here and try to find you people interesting like Tim to have these conversations with. So thank you so much for your support. I appreciate every one of you. Don't forget that Friday is going to be Paraversal Radio. You're going to have a live ghost talk. On Sunday, I'll be back with Fate Mag Radio. Monday will be Denise Pridemore with the Paranormal Pride. And then I will be back Wednesday. Same cat time, same cat channel. And you know what? When you leave, when you get up in the morning, when you're eating breakfast, you be the change you want to see in this world. We can manifest that. I promise you we can. It's easy to get caught up in the negative Nelly things and buying into what people are trying to spoon feed you. But you know what? Be a free thinker. And be out there being the change you want to see. It will make such a difference. It'll make a difference in your heart too. So thank you. Thank you all. And Tim, good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.